Okay, so while we're waiting for it to load, I just want to say hello everybody. And okay, I know I've talked about this before, but here is an advanced version for people who are seeking for more, you know, for more facts and details. And if you want extra picture, it's totally okay. Come watch this video. It is just another extra part about part 1. So, first, I need to say this. Watching Starship come to life sure is addictive. Through the hard work of people covering this, people instead the public has never had access to rocket development like this before. I love watching the updates roll in from Mary and the NASA spaceflight crew, Spar Day, Lab Party, RGV, Ariel, and Austin Bernard every single day. It's so awesome what kind of access these dedicated people bring us. Typically, prototypes come out of factories. However, SpaceX has spun this convention around by building their factory around the prototypes, turning Boca Chica into the Wild West of rocketry. So, let's get started. 3, 2, 1, go. So, yeah. First, I want to talk to you about the Starship family. In here, I found a picture of 5 types of Starship. The first type of Starship, it's called a tanker, which is currently right here. As you can see, this is a tanker. But there will also be a tanker variant that carries additional propellants as payload to refuel other starships on orbit. We may see someday one-way bound starships that are stripped down and only made to inject payload to outer solar system. The second variant is the cargo. However, there will be a cargo with a payload bay, but much like an alligator, this giant bay will open its jaws wide and release out the massive payloads. There's also the lunar lander, which is contracted by Artemis to be on the Earth-Moon system, and they will not have a heat shield or flaps since they won't re-enter. So yeah, now let's get on to what is the same and what is different about Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and Starship. Go. So what's the same? Before we get into the deep dive into the differences, it might be the best to lay out some of the similarities between Falcon 9 and Starship. Have all, they're both rockets made by SpaceX. They all have 2 stages, and they all run on super chilled liquid fuels and have a reusable first stage, which means they can be used again, and again. Yeah, and they all have legs to grid fins to land and reuse again. And they probably all have virtually the same avionics and software. Who knows? But that is maybe what we might be seeing these days in Starship with all the current facts today. So maybe if you look at this picture, here's Falcon 9 right here, big Falcon 9. This is big boy Falcon Heavy, and this is big boy Starship. Maybe that is why Starship long time ago it's called BFR, or the Big Falcon Rocket. But like, it doesn't have any Falcon heritage. Starship has no Falcon heritage. So first, let's go on to the first difference, which is engines and fuel. Okay, first we'll talk about the rocket engines first. Merlin versus Raptor. Here, I will also show you guys the picture. Here is the Starship prototype SN20 landing in Boca Chica, Texas. So first I'm going to talk about the Merlin engine. So yeah, the Merlin engine used on the Falcon 9 are open cycle, meaning they contain a small baby rocket engine called a gas generator. The exhaust from which is then used to spin a turbine that drives the main propellant pumps, and yeah, they are later used to drive the propellant pumps. So right, if you don't know what it is, I don't blame you, and I don't blame you because like it is, because like you guys are all beginners. So let me explain to you. Here is the propellant RP1 and LOX. RP1, they will flow down to these main pumps, and these pressure of the fuel tanks need to be super high because they will literally spit out all of these fuel tanks. From here, they will need to be at super high pressure, quickly going out into here, quickly from here. Oops, sorry. Sorry, from here all the way to here. They need to spit off this fuel out in a fraction of a millisecond. So they need main pumps to help do this job. And what does the main pump do anyway? Well, it helps spin these turbo blades. So all of these propellants, they will go out whoosh in just a few milliseconds. Simple. Next I'm also gonna show you the turbine. This is the second little mini rocket, the baby rocket engine. Yeah, these are just exhaust. They're not much, and they are used to power these main pumps. Get it? So if you look over here, this thing powers up. It becomes hot and stuffy, and then it spits it out. Boom. Easy, simple. That is just an oversimplified version. The next engine is called the Raptor engine. The reason that it's so complicated is that all of the exhaust gas, which you often see in this is the exhaust gas. They will be normally dumped overboard after spinning the turbine, but this thing is instead routed back into the main combustion chamber, and it's used for thrust. I kind of like how the Raptor they don't waste exhaust. They will go and then they will recycle it again. That is really cool. But not only that, but there are two of those little tiny rocket engine thingy, and each with their own turbines and pumps. So basically, you can call it a 3-engine rocket for some reasons. And yeah, and one of this is fuel rich and the other is oxygen rich. LOX is oxygen, CH4 is methane. So yeah, and also these two gas chambers, they're called pre-burners. They are not called combustion chambers. Okay? And yeah, now we'll see the engine count. Starship versus Falcon 9 versus N1 versus Falcon Heavy. Currently, what you're seeing is the Soviet Union. This is from the 1970s during the Soviet moon program called Luna. The Soviets also have a rocket as well, and this is the N1. It is one of the most powerful rockets in the world. It has and try to count the engines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let me count again. I lost track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. There is a total of 30 engines in the N1 Soviet Union moon rocket. And it's kind of a scrub because it got scrubbed out because the Soviet Union dissolved, which is really sad considering it never reached orbit. So yeah, first let's do an engine count. Falcon 9, as the name suggests, has 9 engines, and Falcon Heavy, it is basically three Falcon 9 first stage combined together. So take that, 9 times 3 equals 27, and the Starship is the holy grail of engines, even more than the N1 30 engines, and it will have 31 engines. Wow, that is going to be really extreme. Okay, and then I know what you're thinking. And then at the sight of 31 engines, you might point out, hey, Starship is going to suffer the N1 syndrome, just like the Soviet Union did. But people are quick to point out about how using so many engines on the first stage is dumb, because the Soviet Union N1 moon rocket developed in the 1960s, which is here the N1, you can see it, failed on all 4 of its launch attempts. Well, first off, don't forget the Falcon Heavy has perfect flight record, no fails, and it uses 27 engines. So clearly, the number of engines doesn't scare SpaceX. But also, N1 failed for many other reasons, all having very little to do with the actual number of engines. In fact, many engines helped SpaceX once when an engine cut off during the flight, but but the amount of engine saved it. It didn't fail. So yeah. Next, we're gonna talk about the fuel. First, let's explain this picture. This is Starhopper. Starhopper is another SpaceX prototype which is built to test the Raptor engine. It does a tiny little hop and then it lands back again. And fun fact, Starhopper is also sometimes called the Grasshopper. Fun fact. So let's use what fuels does the rocket use. So as we all know, the fuel on the Falcon 9 they use RP1 or kerosene, which is used on an airplane. And for the oxidizer, they use liquid oxygen, and this technique is called kerolox. However, the Raptor engine it uses fuel as methane, and oxidizer is the liquid oxygen, also called methalox. Methane can be found inside Mars, so that is why, Mom, stop this machine, please, Mom. I'm trying to do stuff. Okay, sorry guys, my mom just did a really loud machine thing. So, okay, anyway, methane can be found on Mars, and that is why Elon chose methane. He wants to mine it on Mars and then bring it back and use it as propellant. So no need to carry heavy loads of propellant. It's all there in your spot. You just need to be busy and mine it. And they also utilize super chilled propellant. What is super chilled propellant, you ask? Well, SpaceX chose their RP1 from almost ambient down by 30 degrees Celsius, which typically gets it below 0 degrees Celsius. But that's nothing compared to the liquid oxygen, which is chilled all the way down to minus 207 degrees Celsius. That's only 12 degrees away from freezing solid. So yeah, that's so cold. And sometimes during a mission, you might see ice cube fall off from the rocket. That is due to it being super cold. But they haven't yet gotten too far on the super chilling propellant for Raptor. It is in the works, but by default, liquid methane is very close to the temperature of liquid oxygen since its boiling point is 161.5 degrees negative, so it becomes solid at 182 degrees Celsius. And due to the closeness of its in the boiling point, we'll likely see SpaceX chill their methane down closer to 180 degrees Celsius as they continue to squeeze performing out of that best. They also have consumables, but there's more than just fuel and oxidizer tank. And there's where the Falcon 9 is more complex than Starship because it has 3 more consumables on board in smaller tanks. First, it's the helium COPVs. So what do they do? Inside the arrows, I have pointed out the COPVs. Inside Falcon 9 tanks are a set of composites, overwrapped pressure vessels, COPVs. These black cylinders house compressed helium. We're talking like 380 plus bars in those bottles. That pressure will blow. It is 10 times stronger than TNT. So it's basically like 10 TNTs in a bottle, ready to explode. That's a bit tough for Elon. I wonder how Elon solved that. But they use this to maintain a constant pressure of about 3 to 4 bars in the propellant tanks. So as the fuels drain out, they put helium, which is extremely undense, in its place. This is done to avoid negative pressure in the tanks and keeps the propellants flowing. And next consumable is the altigenous pressurization. Starship will do away with this entirely. After all, if you're landing on Mars, you cannot just refuel your helium tank. Instead, SpaceX will use methane, as it can be produced on the surface of Mars through in situ resource utilization. Consequently, Starship will pressurize the propellant tanks altigenously, meaning while their engines are running, they'll be pumping some gaseous fuel and oxidizer back in the tanks. they will maintain their pressure by allowing some of the fuels to boil and release any excess pressure. This also helps maintain their temperature as the boil cools the fuel, like your sweat, just like your sweat. Here's a bit of an update. SN9 is in fact using helium to ensure the pressure on the methane header tank after SN8's failure to landing successfully was blamed on low pressure fuel in the header tank. This is just an interim solution, however, and I think it's not going to be used on Mars, but we'll see. Starship, wait a bit, also has header tanks. What is a header tank, you ask? Well, a header tank is the propellant is also going to be stored in smaller tanks inside the tank. Since they will be inside another tank, the propellant will be receive almost no heat from the sun, and therefore it will not boil off. Sorry. The header tanks serve as reserves for the landing phase. Starship will do some pretty intense maneuvers, and if it tries to light this engine from a partially empty tank, it will suck up air bubbles. So these header tanks will provide a source of propellant that's on tap, no matter the orientation or G-load of the rocket. And next, I'm going to talk about nitrogen. But there's one more propellant that SpaceX uses on the Falcon 9, and that's cold gas or compressed. What is it called again? I think it's called. It is N20, and basically it's just compressed air since N20 is 78% of the air we breathe, and they utilize compressed N2O for the gas thrusters on the interstage of the Falcon 9, because there are 2 packs of 4 little thrusters sitting way up on top of the booster stage. These are what help flip it around and continue to guide the booster as it coasts before re-entry. And just like we said before, there's not much N2O on Mars, but even so, SpaceX doesn't want to carry around fluids other than the main propellant. So instead, Starship will utilize hot gas thrusters powered by boiled-off methane and gaseous oxygen. We don't know much about these new thrusters, but they'll likely be named after a bird and probably will be around the 20 kilonewtons mark for thrust. So, in the different fuels, different cycle types, different sizes, and other consideration leads to pretty drastic upgrades in performance for the power plant of each rocket. So, next on, we'll look at the engine comparison. The picture here, it is Falcon 9 launching off from Cape KC, which is Cape Canaveral. Yeah, sorry. So now let's compare. So first, let's compare the efficiency. SpaceX Merlin engine reaches an impressive amount of thrust at 845 kilonewtons at sea level and 981 kilonewtons in vacuum. But the Raptor engine is currently in its infancy and running around 1,650 kilonewtons at sea level and can achieve around 1,800 kilonewtons in a vacuum. But they're already achieving above 2,000 kilonewtons of thrust on the test stand, and that will be their operating thrust relatively soon. And there's another more powerful variant coming. Someday there's going to be a non-deep throttling booster variant of Raptor that will be on the outer ring of the booster, and they're targeting closer to 3,000 kilonewtons of thrust at sea level and more than 3,200 kilonewtons in vacuum. Wow! After all, the Merlin has had every last drop of performance squeezed out of it after over the decade of making the rockets and the engine, and the Raptor engine is just at its infancy, which means the Merlin engine has served SpaceX for 11 years, and now the Raptor engine is just born out of nowhere. Next, we should look at the chamber pressure. A lot of this performance is due to the chamber pressure inside the main combustion chamber. The higher the chamber pressure, the more potential that the rocket has to turn that high pressure into higher thrust and better engines too. The Merlin achieves 116 bar of pressure, while the Raptor is operational at around 275 bar currently, but it has hit the 330 bar on the test stand and will likely reach their goal of 350 bar operationally not too long, knowing SpaceX. But at the end of the day, there is one metric where Merlin currently outperforms the Raptor, and that's thrust to weight ratio. The Merlin will be hard to beat because it has the highest thrust to weight ratio of any liquid fuel rocket engine ever. Now, let's talk about the thrust to weight ratio. The Merlin engine has a nutty thrust to ratio at around 200 to 1, while the Raptor is currently around 107 to 1, but it's increasing to 130 to 1. And again, Elon thinks they could get it to match the Merlin someday. But perhaps one metric that's just as important, especially when you're cramming dozens of engines, is that inside a fixed area is that a thrust to engine footprint ratio. You might notice the Raptor engine isn't that much wider or take up that much space than the Merlin. And if we look at the nozzle exit area, the Merlin 1D has a nozzle area of 0.65 meters squared, while the Raptor has a nozzle exit of 1.33 meters squared. This means the Merlin 1D and the soon operational version of Raptor will have the same thrust nozzle exit area up around to 1,500 kilonewtons per meter square. Next, I want to talk about the nozzle footprints. Okay, so I guess this is all I want to talk about today. Bye! And before I say goodbye, I just want to let you guys know I spent so many hours researching, and then I spent many hours reading Elon's tweets, and yeah, it has been drastic. And I really want to thank you guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure to like or subscribe. It really helps out me, the channel, and I really appreciate it. So once again, thank you all for listening. This is the end of part 1. See you soon in